You know, for us content creators, Tim Sweeney is the gift that just keeps on giving. Hello, my gaming brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in for another episode of QuickBird News, where we cover all the gaming news that's fit to cover from the past week. This episode is going to focus on November 23rd through 29th. For everybody who celebrated Thanksgiving this week, I hope you had a happy turkey day, spent it with family, and got some good eating done. But now we're going to talk about some gaming news. And even though it's been a little bit of a slow news week, I have a few things to talk about. It's now been confirmed by Paradox, the developer of Bloodlines 2, that game has indeed kind of crashed and burned. We'll go over the relevant data here. We've got potential news on a DLC for Hollow Knight Silksong, and maybe they've Remedy has locked in the sequel for Control, so that's interesting. And a little bit of a story about a horror game that was rejected by Steam. Good Old Games said they would be happy to house that game after Steam rejected it, but there's a little bit of a twist there. As always, every story is covered in the description box down below, is marked with a timestamp, so feel free to jump down there and go to a story that interests you. But before we get to all that, I have to talk about our cover story. And that is our man Tim Sweeney over at Epic Games, and he just can't seem to go a month or two without putting his feet in his mouth. I'm going to start with this IGN article from Thursday, the 27th of November. And the headline reads, "Why stop at AI use? We could have mandatory disclosures for what shampoo brand the developer uses. Epic boss Tim Sweeney says Steam should ditch its AI-generated content disclosure." Now, for full context, Tim Sweeney is the CEO of Epic Games. And for those of you who don't know, Epic Games is the company that created Fortnite, runs that. They also created and licensed out the Unreal Engine and run the Epic Games Store. And Tim Sweeney has, kind of led the charge on all of this. And earlier this week, a developer made a comment or a tweet that said that they didn't like that Steam had started mandating the use of an AI tag on their games. If a game has generative AI used to create content in the game, the developer is required to disclose it on their Steam page listing. And the developer made a comment that it should be ditched, and Tim Sweeney came along to agree with that. Let's just scroll down here. Valve's rules mean developers must disclose their use of generated on the Steam store page. For example, the Steam page for Arc Raiders include a note from the developer on how the game uses AI-generated content. And they say how they used it. Okay, and so does Call of Duty, says the same thing. Sweeney believes there's no point in having such disclosures because pretty much, all video games will use AI, he says, responding to one ex-Twitter user who called on Steam and all digital marketplaces to drop the Made with AI label because it doesn't matter anymore. Sweeney added, the AI tag is relevant for art exhibits, etc. It makes no sense for game stores where AI will be involved in nearly all future production. Okay. And that created kind of a firestorm and kind of a backlash. And we come down here. Okay. It says in the case of art, it seems reasonable that this would be done. This is not backed up by law, and Valve is enforcing this policy because they believe it's the right thing to do. Okay. Then Tim Sweeney used shampoo to reinforce his point to another tweet, where he said, this is the tweet that says he agreed to that. Somebody responded, "No, Tim, the customers deserve to know," with a picture of Gabe and his millions of dollars. And Tim Sweeney snarked back about the shampoo. And here is kind of the kicker. Somebody says, it's no surprise to see Sweeney take this position on AI, given Fortnite's extensive use of the technology. It's hard to take somebody seriously when they are defending a position that's financially beneficial to them. And somebody in the comments of this very article said it perfectly. I'll scroll down here and they say, Upton Sinclair once said it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. I could not have said it better. Because essentially, Tim Sweeney is making this point because Fortnite relies on the AI itself and his future endeavors will. What is stunning about this is how freaking tone deaf his comments are. Almost universally, well, I won't say almost universally, I would say the majority of players have responded positively to this tag, and people are responding negatively to Tim Sweeney's comments. Now, let me cut over here to this PC Games In article that was published on Friday the 28th. Valve dev counters calls to scrap Steam AI, saying it's technology relying on cultural laundering, IP infringement, and slopification. And again, I probably couldn't have come up with a better description. Okay, and this first paragraph covers about him yammering about Sweeney yammering about this. A Valve developer now had their say in a back and forth with X, saying that the only people afraid of this are the ones that know their product is low effort. Okay. I'm sorry if I mispronounced this name. AI Sanchez, a Valve artist who had a can in Counter-Strike's 2's remake of Train last year, came to the defense of the AI disclosures. This is like saying food products shouldn't have their ingredients they have their ingredients listed. Customers should know the information to decide if they want to buy something or not, to defend on their they want to buy something or not depending on its content. The only people afraid of this are the ones who know their product is low effort. And they go back and forth for a while about this. And this is where he made the comment about cultural laundering, IP infringement, and slopification. And educated customers will pick an original over counterfeit. To me, this is kind of the point, and this is where I think Sweeney drops the ball, like he does so often. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't really matter factually if he's right in this situation. The overarching fact, the one that's more important, is that I think the majority of players want to know. They either don't care or they want to know. There's nobody that's actively saying this should not be on there from the player side. It's coming from the dev side. And Sweeney has, in my opinion, a long history of siding with developers over consumers, which is a bad look for somebody who owns a storefront. Just saying. He has always sided with the developers over his players. That might be great for his social circles. It's not so great for a long-term sustainable model. We're going to get to that in just a second. And it's not just obviously players that are disagreeing with him. You can come over to this Eurogamer article, and this is from Tuesday the 25th, where the lead developer, formerly of The Witcher 3 and now of Blood of the Dawnwalker, says, I don't feel that games created only with AI will have soul. And, okay, the promising half-vampire, half-human role-playing game, Blood of the Dawnwalker, used AI during development to test spoken lines before hired actors came in to record them. Game director Konrad Tomeskevich, hopefully I said that right, told me this during a recent interview where he shares a fairly balanced take on AI use in general. We used AI for voices during the testing period before the recordings. You understand a lot more when you hear the voices, and we wanted as soon as possible to test the game. Then when we decided the story was great and it worked, we started the proper recordings with the actors. This is the use of AI we had in our company. I think it's quite reasonable. But on this subject, I think AI should help people and shouldn't replace them. And that's kind of where we're sitting with this. And Let me come out to the big picture here. I'm going to preface this by saying two things. One, I have a mixed opinion on AI in general usage. I'm a fantasy and science fiction writer. By the way, link in the description if you like that stuff. Go check out my books. And I understand, and as a content creator in that sense of being an author, I understand the impact that AI has, and I recognize that it is something that we all have to contend with. It's not going to go away, and right this second is as bad as it's ever going to be. It's just going to get better, and it's going to become more productive, and we can either live with it or we can stick our heads in the sand. I don't like everything about it, but I recognize the reality. So this is my position here. What I'm about to say in a minute has nothing really to do with Tim Sweeney's position on AI. I am not staking out a pro or anti-AI position here. Secondly, this is not me glazing steam or slobbering on their knob. I have my own issues with Steam, even though it is my primary storefront, me being a PC player. It's where I get most of my games. And I recognize that it does have problems. I didn't blame them for the payment processor debacle earlier this year, where they took games off the platform because of the threat to cancel transactions. Though, if you want to use American football parlance, I think they left a lot on the field. I don't think they fought it as hard as they could have, and that was disappointing. I've also been disappointed with some of their censorship and continued censorship, and how it's a very uneven way that they will allow games on the platform or police their games. It feels like it's not very rigorous. Okay, having said that, I'm going to get to my point here. In my opinion, Tim Sweeney is a bitter whiner who is anti-consumer. And this is just a pattern I have seen emerge over the last few years. The fact is that I think a lot of people want to know if AI was used in the development of their games. And telling people that is just customer service. It is just good disclosure. For him to sit there and say to ditch it is yet another example, in my opinion, of him thumbing his nose at gamers. He likes to pretend that he's pro-developer, but I'm not sure that's not an act either. I think Tim Sweeney's only pro-Tim Sweeney. In my opinion, he would be much better served working on the Epic Games storefront than running around and acting like a bitter ex-spouse who is more concerned with what their ex is doing, who's now happily remarried and has moved on, than fixing their own life. And that is how Tim acts. The Epic Game Store launched 7 years ago, and the fact is, it didn't have cloud saves for the first 6 months. It didn't have a shopping cart for 3 years. It just, in the last couple of months, allowed gifting of games. It took a while to add wish listing. Oh, preloads too. It just started preloads. They still don't have user reviews. This has been a very bare bones storefront. And rather than spend time and money trying to fix it and make it a better user experience, all Tim's done is throw money at exclusives and try to give away free games. Now, I've got an article here that I will link down below, and I'll flash it up on the screen here when I edit, that basically it was just written about 2 months ago. It talks about how Steam and Epic have compared over the last year. Despite the fact that Tim has given away, that the Epic Game Store has given away all of these games, millions of games they've given away, their revenue from the storefront made up about 3% of the PC game storefront market, with Epic making up the bulk of it. And I look at that. It was $255 million for Epic, which they say was down about 20% over last year, to Steam's almost $10 billion of revenue. And this is where I kind of have to laugh when Tim likes to trot out, oh, well, you can make 88% if you put our game on our platform. And I say, what is better for the developer in the long run? 88% of $3 million or 70% of $97 million, which is the ratio of what's being paid, to the storefronts there. What are you better off doing? Because the audience, the reach of Steam is so much stronger than Epic. And Epic has done nothing to make it a more attractive platform. Yeah, they've got tons of users. And you can read all this in the article. They've got tons of users. They've registered tons of users to the store. But it so far has, even after 7 years, has not translated to people sticking around to buy games. And I know anecdotally, people who say, I only have Epic to get the free games. I've never bought something there and I never will. I know that they are propping this business up with all the, trying to buy time exclusives and give away free games with all the Fortnite money and all their Unreal money. That may not last forever. And then what are you going to do? You have a product, you use that to get a jump up, but you haven't jumped up. And the storefront is failing. And Tim is out there running his mouth. He spends much more time bitching about Steam than he does about fixing his own products. Like I said, bitter, whiner, and I don't think he's that interested in the consumers. Yeah, he says he's interested in helping the devs out, and he pretends like, oh, well, you can have all these free games. But then he says stuff like this. Well, you don't need to worry about AI. The players want to worry about AI, Tim. It's none of your goddamn business whether they should or not. And saying that's the case just is yet another example of you looking like a fool. If you were really pro-consumer, you would have made a better storefront. You've had 7 years. There's no shortage of time, and there is no acceptable excuse for you not to have produced a better product. If that's really what you wanted to do, you could have done it. But you're really not that interested. You just want to take pot shots at Steam. And that's pathetic. And so are you. Okay, enough talk about Tim Sweeney. I'm going to get hemorrhoids if I keep talking about this clown. Let's move on. So I'm going to talk about a couple other stories we have here for this week. I'm trying to make this episode too long. We're going to start with this PC Games In article from Thursday, the 27th. Bloodlines 2's disastrous $37 million write-down lies with Paradox, says its CEO, as the controversial Vampire the Masquerade game flops. And basically, the article writer says that they had scored a 5 of 10. It's got middling reviews, and they've now written down $37 million worth of the asset. I'm no accountant, but from what I understand, a write-down versus a write-off, whereas a write-off is basically wiping the asset from your inventory, saying it has zero value. A write-down is only reducing the value of the asset, so it still has some value. But they're basically saying the game and the IP has less value. And their article writer says in their review, you could describe it as an RPG, but it wasn't a satisfying or direct sequel to the first game. It's not a great action experience, marred with technical flaws and messy combat, etc. So it just kind of missed on all fronts. As reported by GamesIndustry.biz, the game is estimated to have sold 120,000 copies on Steam, reeling in a net revenue of $4 million so far. And this thing had a 10-year dev cycle. So, it was in development hell for a long time. They pushed it out, and it flopped. We can take a look over at the SteamDB page, and you can see under 1,000 players now. It's a flop. 120,000 games, even if it sold that many more on console. I don't even know if it was released on console. It did not make back its money, and it's basically a failure. Unfortunately, another game that was long anticipated has flopped, and that's unfortunate. I think we can all agree that Hollow Knight Silksong was a resounding success when it released after years of teasing. But as always, players are going to be hungry for more. And I'll follow this Game Rant article here from Friday the 28th of November that says Hollow Knight Silksong reveals DLC details. Now you can scroll down here. It kind of talks about how the support for the games has come along. That was what happened for Hollow Knight. And they talk about some of the patches and everything. But we get to the juicy business here. The DLC plans and what Team Cherry has announced so far. They have not made a formal announcement regarding Silksong DLC or potential release window. They say, according to the co-founders, Team Cherry is already developing new content for the game, though much of it is still up in the air with no set timeline. And though nothing has been officially announced, the developers confirmed through the interview, new content is in development, and then some other things that they're going to try and do to integrate new content in to make sure it's smooth for new players, to not expand the world, to be unwieldy and unmanageable. They just want to make sure they're doing it right. They took years to make sure they got Silksong right after releasing Hollow Knight, so I don't expect to see this anytime soon, but the fact of the matter is they are working on new content, which should be good news for Hollow Knight and Silksong players everywhere. There is more coming. We're just going to have to wait for it. In the same good news category, I'll cite this article from Insider Gaming, also from Friday the 28th. Control Resonant Trademark discovered ahead of the Game Awards. A possible registration from Remedy may hint at a new Control project. Further, its timing is coincidentally near the Game Awards, set to go live on December 11th. And it says Control is a fairly new series starting in 2019. First spotted by MP First, but found on the European Union Intellectual Property Office website, the title Control Resident has been filed for trademark. In addition, it's been done by Nordia Attorneys at Law Ltd. Limited. Interestingly enough, Remedy Entertainment uses these lawyers, making it seem like it is indeed a new Control title. It's important to note, though, that Remedy has not announced a new title or project for Control, so take it with a grain of salt. Remedy has also stated it's exploring film and TV, so it may be related to that rather than a new game. If you haven't played Control, and you like kind of action adventure games, I really recommend it. It's got a unique narrative. It's a lot of fun. I love the power set. And overall, it was just a very enjoyable game. 100%ed it and had fun the entire time. They say, of course, the timing is rather convenient as the Game Awards are just around the corner. Remedy is no stranger to Jeff Keighley hosted shows. Alan Wake 2 and Control had huge presences there, blah, blah, blah. So it's very possible this game may show up at the Game Awards. An announcement may. I'll be watching them. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to live stream or not, but I would love to see a Control 2 announcement, and we will just see what happens. Next, we'll turn our attention to this article from PC Gamer, which was posted on Friday the 28th. Good Old Games says it's proud to give horses a home after the horror game was rejected by Steam, but commenters won't let it forget the time it rejected another horror game. Horror adventure game Horses was rejected by Steam after it was submitted in 2023, as the storefront put it, content that appears in our judgment to depict questionable conduct involving a minor. The developers argued the scene in question has since been changed to feature an adult, but Valve has declined to re-review the game. Horses is still set to release on other storefronts, with GOG going so far as to say it is proud to give it a home on GOG and a post on X, but onlookers are using that pledge of support to shine a light on a different game. The game in question is Devotion, a 2019 Taiwanese horror game that was review bombed after an alleged joke at the expense of Chinese President Xi Jinping was discovered in a piece of environment art. Devotion's publisher pulled it from Steam. It never returned. The publisher also had its business license revoked, because that's, a thing that happens in those countries. In 2020, GOG announced it would be selling Devotion, but then retracted the announcement after receiving many messages from gamers. Translation, it received a lot of backlash from Chinese gamers. GOG's X post encourages people to pre-order Horses since they can't on GOG since they can't on Steam, but replies are full of commenters reminding Good Old Games of its history. A repost of GOG's Devotion rejection reads, "Should have shown this energy for Red Candle's Devotion. I love GOG, but still feel disappointed over that. Never mind the horse. Let's talk about the elephant in the room." Maybe he should have said the Winnie the Pooh in the room. If you know, you know. So, sometimes I only post this to highlight the fact that sometimes there's a little more to a story than meets the eye at first. I would give GOG credit, Good Old Games credit, for hosting this game that Steam declined to host. But at the same time, maybe their sheets aren't always clean either. So, the more you know. Next, we have some Cyberpunk 2077 news, and most of it's pretty good. I'll start with this Games Radar article from Thursday the 28th. Cyberpunk 2077 is CD Projekt Red's main source of revenue, outpacing The Witcher 3's 5-year sales with 35 million copies sold. So in 5 years, Cyberpunk has topped 35 million copies. And this is actually pretty remarkable considering the state this game released in, and how broken it was on a PS4. How many bugs it had and so on. They've really gone on a pretty good redemption arc, turned the game around, running much better now. Reviews numbers have come up. The DLC release for Phantom Liberty went over really well, and so it's going quite well. They say, let's see, in a new commentary about the company's latest quarterly financial results, Chief Financial Officer Peter Niblowitz, I'm sure I mispronounced that, I apologize, confirms this hefty sales milestone, adding it's a better result than Witcher 3 was able to achieve in the same post-release timeframe. Cyberpunk is now our main source of revenue, and we continue to expand its availability. I guess they brought it to Switch 2, and so it's doing quite well, and they said the organic sales have been good year over year and retaining its popularity. So that's a good thing. Also, this article from a website called Twisted Voxel, which was published on the Thursday the 27th. I think I said Thursday the 28th for the last one. I'm sorry, the 27th. CD Projekt has ramped up development of Cyberpunk 2, but won't show anything new at the Game Awards. They say that they now have 135 total developers working on this project full-time, so they're going all into it. Then they say those expecting to get a glimpse of footage from Witcher 4 or teaser for Cyberpunk 2 will be disappointed, as CDPR has clarified they won't be bringing any new content to the Game Awards this year. So we're not going to see anything yet. During a September 2025 interview, Keanu Reeves mentioned he's more than happy to be part of the sequel. He'd love to play Johnny Silverhand again. Back in May 2025, the Cyberpunk universe creator Mike Pondsmith revealed the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077 will feature a new Chicago-inspired city in addition to Night City. He mentioned the game will take the players to that new city that doesn't feel like Blade Runner, but looks like a version of Chicago that's gone wrong. So that sounds pretty cool, and they are still leaning forward into this. Based on what I've read, I would not expect to see Witcher 4 until 2027 at the earliest, and Cyberpunk till 28 or 29, I think is more realistic. But the future is looking bright for CDPR. Things are going well for them. I hope they continue to do so because players are loving the games, and to me, that's what matters. I want more games that players are going to love. When are they going to learn? When are they going to learn? This PC Games an article from Thursday the 27th. Diablo 4 Challenger Last Epoch confirms paid DLC classes are coming, and its Steam reviews have taken a massive hit. Color me stunned. As we near Last Epoch's first major expansion, the Ouroboros developer 11th Hour Games has shared a modest roadmap showcasing what is to come. Despite previous claims from the studio, the game would never have paid content tied to it. EHG last month admitted it may have to shift its stance as it failed to turn a profit. Now, despite confirming the expansion itself will be free, the reveal that its new classes will come in the form of paid DLC will come in the form of paid DLC has players rushing to their keyboards. Okay, and it talks a little bit about Last Epoch. If you don't know about it, it's similar to Diablo 4 or Path of Exile. And they say, let's start with the good news. Okay, according to the latest post, the new expansion will be free to existing players, and so on and so forth. They say sometime in 2026. However, the one thing that's gotten players up in arms is the announcement of the first iteration of a new paid class type called Paradox classes, which are described as a fully alternate playable class built on systems that work differently from anything in the game. And they basically said that the first 3 seasons of Last Epoch weren't profitable, and expanded development time and cost have necessitated exploring alternative revenue streams. Cosmetic sales have not been enough to cover dev costs over the long term. Though we knew this was a very real possibility, paywalling entire classes still leaves a bad taste. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 that we covered earlier in this video originally had 2 of its 6 clans locked behind a day 1 DLC. And they got such negative feedback over that, they had to abandon it. But I'm sure it tainted the long-term prospects of the game. People were already kind of soured on it up front. I suspect this will be no different. And, like the writer of the article said, if you go over to the Steam database, here it is on, here is the, not Steam database, the actual Steam page. If you come over here and look, most reviews, mostly negative, 26%. What happened to my formatting here? There we go. Mostly negative in the last 30 days, 26% positive. And look at that. They're just getting lambasted here. And you can look at the reviews. Going pay to win, don't waste your time. Since at least 2018, the developers of this game have claimed there would never be paid content, that once you purchase the base game, all updates are free forever. Today, they have broken that promise. A year ago, I would have wholeheartedly recommended this game. It was one of the best ARPGs I've ever played. However, the game has just been bought by Krafton, who is disgustingly proud of being an AI-first company. So there's that problem. Krafton ruining yet another game. Krafton bought the game, which means EHG are sellouts. Pay for Paradox classes. This one-time payment will be all that a player will have to spend to have the complete Last Epoch experience and be on the same footing as other players. I can forgive bugs, problems, and performance, but I cannot forgive lies. We helped you guys out with money when you needed it. You broke your promise. So you can see this is going over about as well as a turd in a punch bowl, and I don't know why anybody's surprised about it. So I guess we'll see if they manage to weather this storm or if this is the final nail in the coffin. I'm going to round out this video with 2 articles from Engadget, the first of which was from Wednesday, the 26th of November. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is somehow still under development. I don't even know what to say to this. They say that the game looked like vaporware even before the extreme cost-cutting trend started. The job listing is for a technical sound engineer, which tells us they're still hiring for the game. I mean, Ubisoft first teased this prequel in 2008, officially announced it in 2017. They described its scope as wildly ambitious, given and perhaps to a concerning degree. In 2022, Bloomberg poured more cold water on its timeline, reporting that the game was still in pre-production. Is there a single person watching this video that thinks this is somehow going to turn out to be a success? It is 8 years under official development. After 5 years, it was still in pre-production. It's being run by Ubisoft. I say there is statistically about a 50% chance this game gets canceled, 40% chance it gets released and flops, and 10% chance that it maybe does good. Let me know down below if you think I am being optimistic with those percentages. Then on the flip side, I want to point out this article from Friday the 28th. Hytale's early access build drops on January 13th and costs $20. We finally have a release date for the early access build of Hytale, and it's okay. Pre-orders go up on December 13th. This is a true early access build, so don't expect a polished experience. Developer Hypixel Studios says it's still very much unfinished and will be buggy, but the team is committed to perfecting the game over time. Studio co-founder Simon Collins-Laflamme recently said, "I don't think the game is good yet." They probably mean it's just not as good as they want it to be. For the uninitiated, Hytale is an open-world adventure game that looks to be visually inspired by Minecraft. It's been under development since way back in 2015. It's had a long road to getting to this early access. Riot bought the studio in 2020, ostensibly to continue work on it. However, the company soured on the concept. It shut down Hypixel Studios earlier this year and ended development of the game. Hypixel managed to secure funding to buy the rights back to Riot and brought Hytale back from the dead, rehired a bunch of their devs that were laid off by Riot, and just showed a whole bunch of new footage of the game. And it's like the article says, it's nice to get a happy ending for once. Okay, so here is a small studio that is trying. They refusing to let their game die. So here, I'm going to wish them success. Y'all know how I feel about indie games. I think they're great, and I love to support them. So I wish these guys all the best. All right, y'all, I'm going to leave this one here. As always, I appreciate you tuning in for this episode. If you enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like on the video. I would love to have your subscription. If you agreed with my rant about Tim Sweeney or didn't, or anything else in this video, let me know in the comments down below. I read all comments, try to answer as many of them as I can, and I always appreciate that engagement. I will be back next week with another episode of Quick Bird News to cover the gaming news of the week. And I have some other things going on. I'm in the middle of a Let's Play right now, and I'm still posting some more content. So I appreciate you checking that all out. All right, I'm going to go now. Thank you once again for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.